MMA Split. I'm Matt.
I'm Josh.
And we're here to break down everything that happened at UFC 257. Lots of news as well. We're going to be covering Jake Paul fighting Ben Askren on April 17th, discussing Ryan Garcia potentially fighting Manny Pacquiao, covering everything that's going to be coming up in February in the UFC and the world of MMA in general, and a few other bits of news as well. We've got a hell of a show ahead of us, haven't we?
Yeah. The main card was insane for 257. We're just gonna go straight into it, yeah.
We're going straight in.
Yeah.
Paid the cost to be the boss. Diamond Dustin, you are a diamond underdog, and I've never been so happy to be wrong. Let's go back to last week. We, with a very heavy heart, predicted McGregor to win. We said we didn't want that to be the case. We just felt it was a really bad style matchup. And I think you and I both agreed that it is incredibly difficult to overcome mentally a first-round knockout, particularly in the manner that it did. Even with all the growing, it's something that's very difficult to delete out of your mind. And there's always that fear until you've taken that first real punch from the person that it could be the same story again, which only makes Dustin's win and the manner in which he won even more impressive.
Yeah, I mean, we did say that, we definitely wanted the Diamond to win this one. I will say in the build-up to the fight, he was saying all the right things. Previously, it had been a case that McGregor had really got under his skin. He'd never hated someone like that. There was definitely a lot more overwhelming. There was a bit of an intimidation factor, and that wasn't going to be the case in this fight. Things were a lot more jovial at the weigh-ins. It was a completely different climate that this one occurred within. And God fucking damn, those low kicks, his leg looked pretty fucked. And I guess it's kind of like when Chandler fought Primus, when Cejudo fought Mighty Mouse. Calvin was kind of putting the narrative as the fact that when Poirier catches him with that right hook, it's that McGregor wants to kind of move away from it and the leg's gone. I actually kind of saw it more as McGregor had ducked under that right hook a couple of times and thought he was going to get away with that. He'd already been rocked, and Poirier is just going to wait for the head. He's not going to swing above it like that. It was sloppy work from a guy that had been rocked. Didn't look at his best, but certainly not the worst people could have imagined him coming in. I think McGregor had some good moments in the fight. Certainly caught Poirier with a few good combinations in the first round. Poirier's head movement is very difficult to read, but particularly for kind of like a Muay Thai, Taekwondo, kickboxing kind of style, throwing in a lot of kicks. McGregor has certainly over the last kind of phase of his record, the last 5 or so fights, been a lot more kind of boxing heavy, and he was able to catch Poirier here and there. Poirier still did a good job of slipping when he could and wore the shots well. McGregor did not look as good eating them fucking fists coming back at him.
No. And let's just start off. I mean, the whole night was absolutely fantastic. It was great to see the fans. I really felt that the fans were a much more positive force than what we saw on the Wednesday card. And you really felt that it was about as full as they could have possibly and legally got it. McGregor comes out and it feels just like before. He's got, Notorious B.I.G. playing Hypnotize, which I did kind of appreciate. He's got his kind of Irish folk song being played at the beginning. And you just felt that it was a bit of a special night. Poirier comes out, and I've got to be honest, this is a great example for me of how a fight can feel different after you've watched it a second and a third time, even from the walkout. I looked at Poirier coming out and I felt it was similar to the press conference, a little bit nervous. Turns out he was just a man showing up to do business, completely focused. I watched that fight live, and first time watching, it's really hard not to feel that although he's landing a couple of good leg kicks, and I think he timed the takedown really well, watching it live, I felt, okay, well, McGregor's got up quite quickly. He's landing these shoulder strikes in the clinch. He's kind of dominating the clinch strikes a little bit here.
Yeah.
He's landing the cleaner shots. And it could feel like, okay, McGregor's won that first round, and this is maybe going in one direction. That suddenly, out of nowhere, Dustin pulls back in the second. You watch it a second and a third time, and what you realize is that round one is Dustin doing everything that he wanted to do, laying the groundwork and the foundations for what he was not expecting to have pay off until maybe the third or the fourth round. But it was all about laying those foundations. That takedown came just at that moment when McGregor is at his most explosive and dangerous. And even though he didn't hold him down for long, that little clinch exchange, I think, just sucked enough energy out of McGregor that those punches didn't have the same kind of snap and pop. And then when he hit him, Poirier realized that this is a different weight class. He's a different fighter. He can take these punches now. And he's just starting to land that leg kick over and over again. And by the start of the second round, he lands one or two, and you just realize McGregor's not nearly as stable. He starts having to change his stance. He starts trying to catch the kick. And really from that point on, I watched it again, and you can just see that the beginning of the end is coming really early in that second round.
Oh, yeah.
Really early. And, you know, a lot of people are saying that McGregor didn't look as well prepared, didn't look very well conditioned to take the punches. And I can't tell you that he should not have been able to check those leg kicks, because he should have. And I can't tell you that that isn't something that has become far more prevalent in the sport of MMA during the period in the last 5 years where Conor McGregor has been inactive. It is not an issue that he's usually had to face. It is not an issue that he faced to a great extent in a lot of the opponents that he was fighting up until this point. And even when he did come across Jose Aldo, his southpaw stance and the fact that that fight ended in 13 seconds meant that a lot of those points got nullified. On top of that, the only people that have really hit Conor McGregor clean, at least in the UFC, is Nate Diaz and Khabib. And neither of those guys are known for their power punches. Nate Diaz, amazing boxer, fantastic hands, great volume striker, but he does not hit nearly as hard as Poirier. Khabib does not hit nearly as hard as Poirier. I think it is highly possible that what everyone else is saying about, oh, McGregor's not got the conditioning anymore. Okay, maybe he hasn't got the fire. Maybe there's a few extra punches he would have rode out, or, you know, a few punches he would have thrown back and taken a bit more risk in that final exchange where he's getting finished if he was a hungrier fighter, desperate in a way that he isn't now. But it's equally possible that that was the hardest hitter that Conor McGregor has ever been hit clean by. Yeah, and I think it's surprising.
He has fought against power punches. He's just never been hit by
hits. Yeah. And a lot of the power punches he fought was at 145. And I think when Dustin fought him, he was too drained. I think when McGregor has fought power punches in that division, they haven't had the same effect over him because of his frame and size. And he's hit them first. You know, it also starts calling into question, you know, whether or not he has the same power at 155. Nate Diaz gets huge amount of credit for being one of the toughest guys in the sport, no matter what weight class you're in. And I think that was a lot of why that was what was attributed to why he was able to withstand that early barrage against Conor McGregor in their first fight.
And it's at 170.
And it's at 170. But it's equally possible that Conor McGregor's power has not translated up the weight classes in the same way that Dustin Poirier's has. Dustin Poirier at 145 was a drained fighter who was a little too easy to knock down and didn't have the same weight. At 155, his power has multiplied, as well as his conditioning and his ability. I don't think Conor's stronger at 155. And I think that's a real key difference. With Eddie Alvarez, he knocked him down several times with excellent timing because he is a great fighter. But these weren't one-punch KOs. These were Eddie didn't see it coming, and at 145, that is one of those happens, and the fight's over. Yeah. So, effectively, you now got to look at this situation. Dustin Poirier, no matter what anybody says, is the story here. This is a guy who has improved tremendously, who is an absolute dog, who has looked at himself and worked on himself and improved mentally, physically, technique-wise, in every way that you can imagine. He is the unofficial champ at 155, without a question. Khabib's retired. We know he's not coming back. He's the man. And he proved it because he faced not only his own fears, but he faced, I think, is still very dangerous Conor McGregor. You see how sharp his timing was in that first round.
Yeah.
That is not somebody that is rusty. That timing isn't there if you're rusty.
I've got to say, Matt, I think, definitely there is some question to how much of a knockout artist he really can be at 55. Because at 170, he sat Nate Diaz down a few times, but Nate's a tough guy, but it's at 170. Donald Cerrone is at 170. This is only his third fight at 55. Eddie Alvarez, he was hitting him with hard shots, but it was an accumulation of shots that led to the finish. Whereas at 145, it truly was one punch knockout power. But he hits hard still. He hits hard, and the other things they always said, Chad Mendes said, it's not he hits hard, it's how accurate he is. That's always kind of been his gift as well. And he did look good in the first round, but fucking Dustin just is so tough and also really fucking good. Stylistically, might not have been the best matchup for him, but it didn't matter.
Well, it didn't look like that initially, but what he took advantage of is the leg kicks.
Yeah.
And that was something that's available to him because of his southpaw stance. That's the whole reason he's landing those kicks. So he had a game plan that worked perfectly. He was always going to lose that first round, most likely. It wasn't his goal. His goal was to start finding the range for the kicks, get through that first round, drain Conor in the clinch or with a takedown, which is exactly what he did. And then use that to start setting things up for the round afterwards. And once round two came and he'd been clipped with a couple of these punches, he'd realized he wasn't going to fall down. He reset, started finding his range. Even before the finishing sequence, he was starting to land nice combinations coming through. And it was a really disciplined, experienced performance. It was a champion's performance in many ways. And McGregor fought like the man who had just, like a bully. Like he's too used to it just going his way and guys submitting to what he wants to do. And it reminded me of something that Teddy Atlas once said on the Joe Rogan podcast in reference to Mike Tyson, where talking about Tyson's 50-0 record, he said, well, okay, or 50, whatever the record is, 50-5 record, sorry. He says, well, okay, it's not really 50-5. It's, and Teddy's being a little harsh here. I love Mike Tyson. But he goes, you could say that it's 0-5, because Tyson was an amazing athlete. He was an amazing puncher. He was a guy that just ran through almost everybody that he fought. But on the few situations where he came up against resistance, and in his opinion, a fighter not really being a fighter until you've had to go through real adversity. And his opinion being like, you're not a doctor until everything's gone wrong, a kid's come in and his life's on the line and you've got to pull something out right there and then. You're not a lawyer until you've got some innocent guy who's got the debt stacked against him and you manage to get him free. Like, you haven't done it until you've been tested at the hardest point. And he felt with Mike Tyson, when he came up against that adversity, he looked for an easy way out. And I feel that you could make an argument that was Conor McGregor on Saturday night. Now, we know that he's gone through adversity before because of the second Diaz fight, but I don't feel that he was ever really bullied around in that fight. I felt that it was more getting through a kind of exhaustion, a point of difficulty, and a pridefulness at that point to get his career back on track when he was really up against the ropes. But he was still dominating those early exchanges. He was still the one, even in the second fight, knocking Nate down, pushing him around, bullying him.
Yeah.
So, I think he faced somebody that was able to hit him and hurt him as badly as he felt maybe he could hurt Dustin, based on, okay, maybe a different power level, but also a different tolerance level.
I don't know. I just see him as such an unflinchingly confident guy. And, well, here's the thing. He's calling for a rematch, this time for the strap.
That's not going to happen. I'm not saying that the rematch won't happen, but it won't be for the bloody strap.
I think now that Khabib's made things very clear, I think that Dustin's next fight will be for the belt. But here's the thing, Matt. Who do you want to see it against Oliveira?
Oliveira.
Yeah, I want Oliveira as well. I'm going to run through the list anyway.
Okay.
Oliveira, Chandler, or the McGregor trilogy?
Well, there's a name that you haven't put in there. And I'm going to lead with that name.
Go on.
Okay. Yeah, he's coming off a loss. Yeah, he didn't lose particularly well. And maybe it's not the best time for him to position this.
Diego Sanchez,
returning to 155, the division where he had most of his glory. Joshua Fabia, imagine the press conferences. You don't even put Diego Sanchez there. You just put Josh Fabia on the stage. No, in all seriousness, Justin Gaethje. As the great Chael Sonnen says, if you don't know what the answer is, it's usually Justin Gaethje. Now, here's the thing. Justin Gaethje was on a serious roll until he came up against Khabib. But if we have to say that Khabib was just of a different ilk to everybody else, and you almost, now that he's gone, can't hold a Khabib loss against somebody's record, Justin Gaethje's the answer. Do I think it should be Charles Oliveira? Yes, I do. I don't see why it isn't Charles Oliveira. I don't even know what we're talking about here. Like, he's on a 8-fight winning streak. He beat Tony Ferguson in a way that nobody beats Tony Ferguson. This isn't a debate.
Well, here's the thing, though, right? The UFC are very, very focused on the numbers. So what they're going to have to weigh up doing the trilogy with Conor versus an actual, a much more deserving contender. And if it's Oliveira, even though he's the most deserving, he carries the least amount of weight on this end of the scale.
Not true.
I don't think he's as marketable as, if they're not going to do another McGregor pay-per-view like that, then it needs to be someone that's going to get enough money to justify leaving that on the table.
You're thinking too small picture here. UFC, international company, okay? Yeah, the pay-per-views in America are important, but guess what country they value almost as important, but definitely number 2 when it comes to anything to do with viewer numbers?
You're going to tell me Brazil?
I'm going to tell you Brazil. Where is Charles Oliveira from?
Brazil. But
what does Brazil desperately need right now from an MMA perspective?
A champion?
A male champion.
Yeah. They've got Nunes.
They've got Nunes.
And they've got Nunes.
And they've got Nunes. And they've got Figgy. But there was a point where Brazilian MMA dominated the world. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that the pay-per-view is going to be large, but the viewer figures...
The pay-per-view is not really going to exist. They get them on a paid channel, which is $20 a month, which they pay every month irrespective of what's on. It's like a subscription service.
But you still get to sell the rights to that.
Actually, that's back in 2014.
You still get to sell the rights to that.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? If it's like a one-time deal, yes, it's good to have a Brazilian champion. 55 is a bit of a glamour division, so it's a great division to have it in. But McGregor brings a lot of money in for the UFC. Obviously, money talks, but in the UFC, to a sickening degree. I really I don't think necessarily that they're going to go with the McGregor trilogy. I think they're going to probably look kind of between Oliveira, Chandler, and you're right, I think Gaethje will be in the conversation. And kind of you think who's going to be the next best marketable option. And I really worry that Oliveira is going to get snubbed. Or it is possible that they let Poirier sit out for a little bit and Oliveira will have an eliminator fight against someone and they'll do it that way. If they do it that way, I don't think McGregor's going to be in the mix.
Well, here's my issue with McGregor. If you say that the next fight is McGregor versus Poirier for the title, everybody that felt that McGregor didn't deserve it this time around are going to be doubly as right. And even the people that thought he might have deserved it this time around are going to be a bit iffy. It also basically suggests that the UFC are holding their hands up going, we fucked up. It's the biggest statement that confirms what a lot of people have felt, which is that this fight that's just happened should have always been for the belt. And this idea that Khabib was going to come back and you were going to lure him in some way was an absolute load of horse crap.
Yeah.
And it's funny, it was hard not to notice that Dana was disappointed. Even though Dustin is the man, you can see that he's just about the money, Dana. He really, really is. Conor's his cash cow, and as soon as that knockout happened, he realized that this, to a certain extent, at least for now, is the end, or has a huge effect on Conor's marketability. Because guess what? And this is what makes it so wonderful. When you are a Conor McGregor, your entire brand is built on winning. And not just winning, but winning spectacularly. And a lot of other people said this, and I agree. When you were getting submitted, you could always play the out of, well, I'm a striker. Our boxing matches, that's what we're going to do down the future. Have these big fights. Oh, I went 10 rounds with Mayweather. Once that type of guy and that type of brand gets knocked out like that, the market is not the same. It is not a Bisping. It is not a GSP. It is not a Michael Jordan losing the NBA championships. It doesn't work like that. It's going to have an effect on that side of things until he can get things right and start winning. And if he challenges Dustin Poirier to an immediate rematch, I do not see a likelihood of him correcting the mistakes that he would need to correct in that shorter space of time. Do you?
Well, it really depends on what the fuck he's been doing. Because to come out and say he wasn't ready for the leg kicks, who the fuck did you think you were fighting? I mean, Dustin Poirier, Jim Miller taught Dustin Poirier about leg kicks. Jim Miller near kicked his leg clean off. He only won that fight by surviving the third round on one leg. That was a really great fight. If you haven't seen it, Jim Miller, Dustin Poirier, great fucking fight.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think, because I've seen interviews with John Kavanagh, fair play to him. He went straight on Ariel Helwani Monday afternoon, gave a good interview. He was talking about the leg kick, saying, well, the thing is, when you're in the gym and he's got shin guards on and the guys that are throwing them have got shin guards on, it's not going to give you the same idea of how you can take it in the fight and what you can prepare for. That's something that has to happen in real time. There's truth to that. But I was under the understanding that most fighters still can have to condition their shins. And you have to question whether or not, I know that the calf kick is about the muscle, but is there a reluctance, was there a reluctance to check because his shins aren't conditioned?
Well, this is the thing, like whether they're wearing shin pads or not, you should be checking these all just as a matter of improving your technique.
Yeah.
We just didn't see that. And you should be fighting more intelligently in a way that's not just going to keep you heavy on that front leg and keep it exposed like that.
It's funny though, because I really do want to try and give Dustin as much credit as possible. There's no doubt that there wasn't that same level of aggression in the way that he fought. He tried to be aggressive at the beginning. You could see he was halfway across the octagon before the fight started.
Yeah.
So he definitely had that kind of game plan in mind, but there was no adaptability. And I kind of think because he won that first round, it made him a little bit oblivious to what Dustin was doing. Almost that because things seemed to be going quite well, he stood back up after the takedown, he landed shots in the clinch. Maybe he just thought things were going well. And then it was over before he really realized what was going on. Do you think there's an element of that?
Yeah, a little bit. Look, I think, if he stays busy, keeps fighting, which, would presumably put him in a position where if they want to wait until the end of the year for Poirier's next fight, do it for the belt, have a title eliminator, maybe he will push for the Oliveira fight. I think Chandler makes a better case for it. I mean, Gaethje makes a better case for it. To be honest, I feel like Oliveira shouldn't have to have another fight. I think Oliveira is the clear number one in that division. Number one behind who we consider the champion, Poirier. So, if he keeps busy, keeps fighting, has his head screwed on straight, because he has been lapsed at stages in his career, I'm sure he can get back to his best. He's certainly athletically still in his prime, comfortably in his prime.
Well, also, let's remember this as well. I think there's going to be more of a necessity to fight now than there was if he won. Here's why. As I said, his brand is built on winning. I think he's smart enough to realize that he needs to get another good showing in. He needs to get that side back on track for him to still be able to sell and market everything else in the same way. Just to give you a great example, the Manny Pacquiao fight, which we're going to discuss a little bit later in the show, being announced against Ryan Garcia, that got announced the day after the McGregor-Poirier fight. And there's no illusions as to why that happened.
Yeah.
They were waiting to see if they could get a much easier money fight against McGregor. And as soon as he gets knocked out in MMA, every single boxer is going to think, it's not worth my time anymore. Doesn't prove anything. You can't even avoid getting knocked out in your own sport. How are you going to avoid getting knocked out by one of the all-time greats? Ryan Garcia pops up straight away. So let's play this game very quickly. Who Dustin Poirier going to fight next?
Oliveira. It just should be Oliveira, okay? If they did want to do a title eliminator for someone versus Poirier, then for me, Oliveira Chandler.
And who is McGregor going to fight next? Candidates: Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, Nate Diaz,
Yep.
Dustin Poirier, Diego Sanchez.
I really worry that it's going to be Poirier in the summer, do the trilogy for the bout. I don't know. I would like to see the Ferguson fight. I think that'd be pretty fucking cool. Likewise, I wouldn't mind seeing him fight Gaethje. I don't think he'd take that fight, but that would certainly be really exciting.
I think the Ferguson fight's the way to go, because you need a fight that still gives Conor credibility if he wins, some excusability if he was to lose, and against someone who's on the same kind of awkward run of form that he is.
Yeah.
Justin Gaethje looked awesome until he came up against Khabib, who beats everyone. So that's a terrifying fight. You're still fighting a guy who's in great shape and in form. Tony Ferguson's coming off a 2-fight slide, hasn't been that active either due to injury, is getting on a little bit, and definitely doesn't have that kind of one-punch knockout power in the same way. In many ways, I think Conor's camp would feel that the skills that Tony Ferguson has got can be nullified by Conor's superior technique, better hands, better footwork, more polished, more fundamentals. So, Conor's a sniper. I think that's a bad matchup for somebody like Tony Ferguson, who likes to need to kind of get in close and feel things out and be a little bit awkward. And not known for the greatest of takedowns, although very good when the fight goes down to the ground.
He doesn't always need it to go all the way down, though. He just needs to get to that neck and sink in that Darce choke, or the it's not actually a Darce he uses. I forget the variation he uses, but anyway, he really just needs the game in transition. That's it. Just any opportunity to snatch your neck. It'd be cool. I'd have a lot of questions about it, but let me ask you this: do you think the Nate Diaz trilogy is ever going to happen?
I think if it was to happen, it would be a sad situation for both fighters. I think it would have an Antonio Nogueira, Shogun Rua trilogy, third fight feel.
Yeah.
Because it's
I don't think quite that bad. But
what I mean by that is that it's one of these fights that you sit on for ages because some guy in the matchmaking room says, well, we've got that fight whenever we need it. We've always got that fight. That fight will always sell. And what they really mean there is that every other fight more relevant will be made before that fight is ever considered. And that will be a real, what do we do with these guys? Unless Nate Diaz and Conor were to both go on an insane winning run. I see that as the only way that this would happen. They could book that fight, though. They could, as Conor's next fight. But I feel that they want to get
think they will.
marketability out of Nate Diaz again. He's dropping back down to lightweight. I think the UFC see him as somebody that they can still sell. And once you do a trilogy like that, the stock of one of those guys is going to plummet forever. Same reason I don't think they want to do the Poirier fight straight away. You've got good stock with Poirier. Why blow it in an immediate rematch?
Yeah, well, yeah, I did read that. Nate Diaz was sort of hitting and wanting to fight Poirier next. Give him a second title shot. I'm kidding.
Listen, if Diaz gets 3 wins together, 100%. And here's the thing. Let's say that Poirier beats Oliveira, which I'm not saying that he necessarily will, but I would definitely be supporting Poirier 100%. As his wife said, and commanded me to do so, I will never, ever again doubt her husband. And she swore to God, so I respect that. Jolie, you were my second favorite moment of the entire card. The first being your husband knocking out McGregor, but having you capture that moment of just in unison saying fuck you to the rest of the world and standing by because you guys have been a fucking team the whole way through. I thought that was pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And I love, just to finish up before we move on to the other fights, love Poirier going into the press conference like he's the champ. Yeah, I hated Fight Island. This was terrible. It was like a prison. I hated every single moment of it. I just showed up and I did my business. I'm not going to fight Chandler because he's had one fight in the UFC, and I would like to see somebody who's actually earned it in this division. Yeah, I thought he handled everything brilliantly.
Yeah, definitely.
And you know what? He could have been such a dick to McGregor. No one would have even blamed him if he rubbed it in his face, but he said everything, behaved, did everything right. Shook his coach's hands.
Yeah.
You know.
He's a classy guy. He's a classy fucking guy.
100% all the way. And fair play to McGregor. 500 grand donated to the Good Fight Foundation.
Yeah. By the way, sorry. Yeah, sometimes McGregor does nice stuff. That was decent. Well done you. Nate Diaz. We're gonna go into it later on, but like, you've heard the rumor that Nate Diaz and Jay Paul are actually kind of looking to put the fight together. I really hope they do that instead of the Askren fight. We'll get into it later on.
We're going to get to that. We've got a man that needs to be discussed.
Yeah, I don't think Nate Diaz is going to fight in the UFC again anytime soon. I really don't. You know, just before we leave, like, Nate completely here, I really hope he does.
10 euros?
What do you know?
10 euros says he fights in the UFC in 2021. Before any form of boxing.
You can't make bets for me when I'm this broke. I know I'll be paying it at the end of the year, or you'll be paying it at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I can't think about €5.
€5, done. Nate's better than that. And he's going to have at least one fight to get relevance again in the UFC. And he's, 35 now? He's getting on.
I got no idea. He's no spring chicken.
He's no spring chicken. He needs to be fighting. His career is drifting him by, and he's not got a lot of chances to go for a title or make a big stack of money from this again. And these other opportunities will be there afterwards.
Yeah. I just have this feeling it's just not going to happen soon. I just really don't.
We will see. But there is a man who must be discussed as we move on to the co-main event. A man who showed up under incredibly difficult circumstances. A man who had all the chips stacked against him in every single way possible. And a man who dreadfully miscalculated how to approach his opponent. Dan Hooker. Oh man, I was wrong about this pick. I didn't mind being wrong about Dustin Poirier. I was delighted, but this one really hurt, man. He looked absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. And as soon as he walked out, I just thought he looked nervous. And it suddenly dawned on me, he's had none of his coaches around. He's had this guy that he hasn't really probably had the same experience of fighting. He hasn't seen him fight the same guys that he's fought in, Michael Chandler, to get a bearing on things. And he just felt poorly prepared, was way too defensive, was overly worried about the wrestling, and just got hit by a monster left hand by Michael Chandler, whose name I will finally say. Man, I don't like you. I really don't. So I'm going to let Josh do all the positive talking about Michael Chandler. I just wanted to get in the commiserations for Dan Hooker. You're way better than you showed there, and you will come back. He threw his gloves into the octagon after he left, which is a bit worrying. But I think that's more of a heat of the moment, emotional kind of response.
I think so.
And frustration. He's so much better than what he showed there. And part of me wonders whether or not the 2 wars that he had last year didn't kind of have a toll on him as well. That's whenever you have fights like that, you're spending a lot of time in recovery. That's time that you're not spending training. That means that a lot of your early training is trying to get back to the level that you were beforehand. You're not really honing the same skills in the same way. All of the travel that he's had to deal with. And he's got some of the best coaches in the game. And it just felt like he had a poor game plan in there. Do you not agree?
Well, I don't know, because I don't really think he was implementing much of what he wanted to do. I think Chandler just kind of kept throwing like that sort of 2-3, the right, the left hook, and was able to hurt him, was able to push him back. Now, I was wrong about this one. I didn't think Chandler was going to finish him early, but I did think that his power and his athleticism was going to be a problem for Hooker.
Let's give some balance. Obviously, I've just sort of given Hooker his dues. Go on, give Chandler his props. Go into Chandler's positives.
Look, he's a 3-time Bellator lightweight champion. The guy is a wrestling beast. He's got heavy hands. He trains at a great camp with great training partners. He trains with Gilbert Burns, used to train with Kamaru Usman. He's been working with Henry Hoof for a long time. Just he might not have the most sophisticated stand-up game, but that's fine, because Henry Hoof's whole system is keep it simple, and it's effective. He understands how to get his fighters prepared to close distance and to use what they've got available. I did not think he was going to fuck him up like that.
No.
Did not see that coming.
Not at all.
I've got a confession as well. I've completely forgotten I can remember most of my picks. I can't remember.
I remember your picks, don't worry.
Fantastic. I can't remember any of the decisions I picked.
It's the one advantage of editing the videos and putting all the graphics on is it cements a lot of these things into your mind.
Nice.
Listen, jokes aside, I'm obviously annoyed that I got this pick wrong, and I'm a huge Dan Hooker fan. So it's just deeply frustrating to watch a guy that you have a huge opinion on just have a bad night. And particularly when you know what he went through to get there, what he's going to have to go through to get home, the fact that he didn't have his coaches, I think he bit off way more than he can chew, and he felt underprepared. That was the real emotion that ended up standing out in all of this. As for Michael Chandler, he looked fantastic. He really did. I can't take it away from the guy. I don't think he had to do a lot in the end, but he was confident coming out. He was enjoying it. He wasn't feeling the pressure. He was just out there to do his best and have a great performance and try and enjoy it. Like he said in a lot of his pre-fight interviews, he's there to have a good time, not a long time. And it shone through his performance. He wasn't afraid to get in Hooker's face. All of the ground that Hooker was willing to concede, he was more than happy to take up. And he really, in many ways, fooled him with a very simple trick. Went low a couple of times and then just did the old one low and then left going up high. And then once he knocked him down, he was so aggressive.
Yeah.
He made sure we're going to get to a fight where the fighter maybe wasn't as aggressive as they needed to be at the end. But Michael Chandler did not make that mistake. He made sure that fight was over. He gave Dan Hooker no time to recover and went straight into the Gaethje. Flip off the cage, almost blew out his knees landing.
Pissed off Dana
White. And then, for the pleasure of DC, drops a good old-fashioned Ric Flair. Yeah. What did you think of the Ric Flair? Everything but the tear in his eye.
Yeah, look, I find Chandler corny, rehearsed, and not in the charming way that Sonnen did it. Like, just kind of annoying. But fuck it, that's not why I care about most fighters. I think he's a really great fucking fighter. Um, let me just say about Dan Hooker though. I'm throwing the gloves off and everything worries me a little bit. I don't think he is retired, but I worry that people might start to think that he's not as good as the rest of these guys at the top of the food chain. I think he is, but he's only 30. He's turning 31 in a couple of weeks. I think he's like a little bit younger than a lot of his peers there. I think who else would be kind of around the same age? Maybe like Gaethje,
Oliveira.
I mean, but
the argument is they're all around that age, though, Josh. They're all in that late 20s, going to early 30s stage. You've got obviously Tony Ferguson, who's approaching the higher end of that, 35, 36, probably going to be closer to 37 the next time he fights. Paul Felder, obviously 36, a little bit older. So there are
32.
McGregor 32 though, Poirier 32, Oliveira around 30, 31, Gaethje around 30, 31. He's in that age range and he's had a lot of fights. He's been in the UFC for a long time if you consider his featherweight career as well. He's learned the hard way and he's an excellent fighter. But I think he's become a little too used to his chin getting him through and his grit getting him through as well.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I also think you've got to pay these guys the respect. Do you really think that Dustin Poirier would have gone to a fight where he wasn't going to have his main coaching team available to him for 3 weeks and in his corner? Do you think McGregor would ever go into a fight? Do you think Gaethje would go into a fight without having Trevor Whitman in his corner in those final 2 or 3 weeks preparing?
No, I don't. What is the specific reason that Eugene wasn't there?
Because the only way that he was going to be able to get back involved traveling for 4 weeks and then being in quarantine for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And Eugene Behrman's number one priority at City Kickboxing Gym is Israel Adesanya, who's
just training for the Blachowicz fight.
Training for the Blachowicz fight. He can't take 8 weeks off because Dan Hooker took a fight before he thought about how he was going to get there and back. And it shows a little inexperience. And I love the attitude. Yeah, I'll take that fight anywhere, anyone, anywhere, anytime. What? I'm not going to have my coaches. Fuck it. I still back myself. I'm going to have to travel for 6 weeks back. I still back myself. And I think that it's a little bit of a wake-up call that once you get past the Ally Quintas and those guys that sit in that 15 to 7 or 8 range in the rankings, you have got to be so well prepared. You've got to have the right guys in your corner leading up to the fight. You've got to have the right advice being told to you as the fight is happening. And you've got to be able to trust that advice. And I have to believe that a Eugene Behrman in that situation would be telling him, okay, be more aggressive, throw something back. Don't just circle the cage. Don't just let him dominate this situation. And I'm sure he had coaches. I'm sure he had guys that he trusted, but he didn't have his main guys. He didn't have the guys that would have put him in the best position to win. And I'm kind of hoping that his frustration really boils down to the fact that he took some things for granted in this fight that you shouldn't take. And maybe that's the lesson with both of him and McGregor, that you can't take anything for granted at this level. These guys are killers. And when you've got Henry Hooft in your corner and you train at a gym with Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns, you are going to be well prepared. And as Chandler said, he had nothing to lose. He's on a great paycheck, has already had a great career, was not just going to get one fight no matter what. He could go out there all or nothing. It was about Dan Hooker showing the experience. And the best Dan Hooker, I still think, would beat the best Chandler. I think Chandler is a great example of a dangerous guy for 6, 7, 8 minutes. And then the tide will start to shift and the explosivity starts to go away. And Dan Hooker has shown himself to be a guy that can usually deal with that and nullify it. But it wasn't the case on Saturday, unfortunately. I know it's in the morning. I know that the hours are weird as well, and Fight Island is strange, but it's about putting yourself in a great position to win. I hope he comes back. He's such a great fighter.
I think he will. I think he's just underestimated Chandler a little bit. I think you underestimate Chandler a lot.
I did underestimate Chandler.
I definitely think Dan Hooker has a fantastic shot at winning that fight if they did a rematch at in 5 rounds, for sure. Look, I don't think he's retired. I think the Hangman's coming back. Who would you like to see him fight next?
Chandler. So I'm not liking this title fight talk that was coming out straight away. Chandler versus Poirier. And let's just get something straight. Poirier shut that down straight away. He's got no interest in that. And out of a lot of these other guys that he could fight for the title, I think Chandler's a very winnable matchup for Poirier.
Yeah.
Stylistically, compared to Oliveira.
Yeah, certainly.
Compared to Oliveira, 100%. Because Dustin's not going to panic if he gets taken down. He's not.
Well, he's going to look for the sub. You know, he has a very, very slick, very opportunistic submission game.
He knows Chandler will tire himself out eventually.
Yep.
He also knows that Chandler's not somebody that's going to be devastating with ground and pound. He'll have ground and pound, but his defense is good enough off his back to prevent that. He's really just trying to make sure that he doesn't do anything, get stuck for too long on his back if he gets taken down, and he doesn't get hit by the big right hand or the left. That's it. And Dustin can do that easily. If they make that for the title fight, I think Dustin gets crowned the champ. But it's not a fight that interests him because he wants to fight guys that have proven it in the UFC. Who would I like to see Michael Chandler fight? Justin Gaethje.
That would be a cool fight.
That would be a fantastic fight. Their wrestling nullifies each other out a little bit. They both have heavy hands. You'd have to favor Gaethje based on the quality of his striking and the improvements he's made under Trevor Whitman. But anything could happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Gaethje's a good shout. I think even though Dustin Poirier doesn't want to fight him, if the UFC says for the belt, of course he's going to take the fight.
I think they'd have to say for the belt that you get pay-per-view points like you were the champ.
Yeah, they'd sweeten the deal. Yeah, I've got to believe. But you know, because Poirier is going to ask for it, because that's the smart thing to do.
Yeah.
But I think Chandler. I don't know. I also think something like if he's not going to be fighting for the title, you know, the next fight would probably be a title eliminator, so it would have to be Gaethje, if not Oliveira. But I would kind of like to see the fight with Tony Ferguson. I think I'd almost like to see that fight more than the McGregor fight. If we're just playing like fantasy matchup.
Well, the thing is that we've got like 4 or 5 of these guys, and we can swap them around in a lot of different ways, depending on how the dominoes fall. I think the only thing that really matters to us is that when they say which one of these fights is for the title, Dustin Poirier's name is in there.
And probably Charles Oliveira.
If there's one thing I really appreciate Dan Hooker for in Fight Week is coming up with the nickname Charlie Olives. It's so much easier to say. It's going to save me on this podcast a huge amount of time because I think we're going to be talking about Oliveira a lot or Charlie Olives, as I'll now say, a lot in the coming months.
I know I was going to do it a bit backwards. I shouldn't slam that into the microphone. Matt, I was actually going to say, like, who do you want to see Hooker fight next? I know I keep saying his name, Tony Ferguson.
I don't like that fight for him.
I don't like the fight for him, but I like the fight for me.
I'll tell you who, it depends on what direction you want to go in. Are you going to give him another more difficult guy to beat who's on a losing streak as well or has lost his last fight? Or are you going to give him a guy who's trying to move up the rankings but is a little bit lower down who's on a winning streak? Because if you're doing that direction, I could see a Beneil Dariush. I know it's a little bit out there, but he's looking pretty damn good at the moment.
Diego Ferreira.
Well,
that's not an easy fight, though.
Maybe sell a rematch with Paul Felder, but I think that's a fucking brutal fight for both of them. If you wanted to be mean, RDA.
Yeah. I really think they want to look to give him like the next biggest fight that they can. And I think that's probably the right thing for him. You know, someone that there's no chance he's going to underestimate. Not make or break, but, you know, certainly another big opportunity.
I'll say this, though. I don't think he's going to fight for a while. I don't think we'll see him until after the summer.
Yeah, I would hope so. I don't want him to rush back into it. but I don't think you need to rush Tony Ferguson back into a fight right now either. So
that's true. It's exciting. I've said this on the podcast before. Even though Khabib is clearly the best of all of these guys, now that he's gone, it's such an exciting division. We don't know what's going to happen with a lot of these fights, and anyone could end up being the champ. I'm excited. Should we move on to women flyweight?
Yeah, this is a really solid performance from Calderwood.
Yeah,
Jojo just dominated Jessica Eye. I don't think Jojo is right now anywhere close to being ready to fight Shevchenko.
she needs a couple more.
Yeah, and she seems to know it from what she's been saying, before and after the fight. I think that working with John Wood and training with Roxanne Modafferi is really going to help shore up the gaps in her knowledge, because she has fantastic Muay Thai, but her overall sort of MMA fight IQ and MMA game plan has always been lacking, and John Wood can certainly fix that. And grappling has always been a weakness for her, and training with Modafferi, she might not be the most explosive or slickest of grapplers, but she is really, really experienced, really knowledgeable, and really strong for that weight class. So I really think that Calderwood has every opportunity to continue improving, but she should take at least one more fight before thinking title shot again. I'm skipping over everything. What did you think of the fight, Matt?
I thought she was awesome. Before we said it on our previous podcast when we did the picks, you said a lot is going to depend on which Jojo Calderwood shows up.
Yeah.
And I think we both felt that she was always the better fighter. It was just within her to just show what she was capable of. And as long as she did that, she'd win the fight. I think, if I recall what you said, is if we see the Jojo Calderwood that fought Valerie Letourneau, she's going to win it pretty comfortably. If we see the Jojo Calderwood that fought Andrade or Jennifer Meyer, or Caitlin Chukagian, then we're not going to see it. And we got a lot more than Valerie Letourneau. I know that she got the knockdowns in that fight, but I thought in many ways this was her most complete performance. At every range, I felt she dominated.
Yeah, Matt, she outstruck her on the significant strikes, 77 to 148. Okay, almost double. On the total strikes, 104 to 214, slightly over double. And honestly, watching the fight, it seemed like I thought that gap would be even bigger. Just Jessica Eye is, tough, and, she's got she can hit hard. She hasn't got super heavy hands, but she can hit hard. She's just not on the same level. I was really impressed by Jojo. Really impressed by Jojo.
Yeah.
But maybe two more fights. Just see what kind of improvements you can continue making, with your camp, because everything just seems to be kind of lining up. Maybe, as I think about it, on paper, everything's just sort of lining up for her. I think right now we'd be rushing it, and she's not going to get more than one title shot if it doesn't go well.
No.
Not while Shevchenko is still active.
The thing about this division, when you've got a champion like Shevchenko, once we get past Andrade, assuming that Shevchenko is going to end up defending her belt against Andrade, and
big assumption,
and assuming that Shevchenko would defeat Andrade comfortably enough for there not to be a rematch, big assumption, you end up in this situation where you just feel that everyone else that could fight Shevchenko, a little bit like when Khabib was champ, is going to lose. But what you need is somebody that has some hook, something about them that creates an argument that you can sell the idea, or even believe yourself as a promoter that this could be a competitive fight. And I think Jojo's got this. Her Muay Thai background is nowhere near the level of Shevchenko. And she is way more static. She has a far more classic, stationary, block counter kind of style.
Yeah, where Shevchenko is the archetype MMA fighter.
Yeah. However, what Jojo has is a willingness and a style and a kind of enjoyment from making the fight scrappy and dirty. even when she's winning at long range, she'll get in the clinch and just exchange elbows and knees and dirty boxing and win those exchanges. And I think there's an argument for that. She is somebody that can rough up Shevchenko, not necessarily beat her, but make her feel uncomfortable in a way that we haven't really seen anybody do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking about this as well. Matt, if Jessica Andrade beats Shevchenko, big if.
Big if.
But if she beats Shevchenko, I only really think that JoJo right now is in the title conversation for maybe the shot after, because one, she was kind of promised the fight before, it fell apart, and then she took the fight with Maya, which I don't think necessarily was the worst thing to do, but obviously set her back. Yeah. Shevchenko's pretty much cleared out the division. There's not a lot of girls in the top 10 that she hasn't fought or that would really have any kind of argument to get the next title shot. But if Andrade wins, I don't think Calderwood is really the most prominent one in the conversation. Let's say for whatever reason that there wasn't going to be a rematch, and Andrade was going to, or they have a rematch, and then Andrade is going to defend against someone in a quick turnaround, kind of Figgy style. I don't think it would be Calderwood. You know, I think you probably look at maybe Lauren Murphy, Caitlin Chukagian. I think there's probably some more promising options sort of higher up the rankings.
Maybe so, but Calderwood's also, I'm not going to say she's a UFC darling, but she's not difficult to work with. She'll say yes to pretty much any fight that they give her. She's at the UFC PI. She's near the headquarters. She's on the grounds. Little things like this, I don't know how much of an effect they should have, but I do think they have an effect over certain opportunities. If, let's say, you're balancing two people and one of them is, you know, a company person, yeah, they'll tend to kind of help out that person that they feel is giving them the least amount of problems. And they like JoJo. She's you know, very sweet. She's got a very likable personality. She's probably very easy to work with. And she's obviously got the support of a country. She's got Scotland behind her. So they will always think that they can sell and market to an audience greater than another American fighter with a similar ranking.
Yeah. Well, actually, more than Scotland, I think like most of Britain gets behind JoJo.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot.
Funnily enough, a friend of my dad's actually used to train with her at the same gym. Yeah. A guy called Jamie, Scottish guy.
Mate, that's worth a 5-minute call.
Oh man, we could definitely get Jamie. Yeah. I'll tell you what, man. Jamie would be a great guy to get on the podcast. He used to go on my dad's radio show to talk about UFC and MMA back in the day.
Let's reach for the stars. Let's try and get him on.
Well, one thing, and I'll make a little announcement. One thing we are going to look to do for you, Laurie, watching our show as our loyal subscriber, is we're going to try and start releasing more kind of detailed content. We want to start doing some deep dives on individual fighters. We want to have some stuff that people can kind of revisit. Obviously, this podcast kind of is more of a weekly relevant news catch-up kind of show in our opinions. But we want to have some stuff that Laurie can, and anyone else that he tells to watch, can go back and enjoy that sort of doesn't age in the same way. And we've already decided our first deep dive is going to be on Ryan Hall. We'll hopefully be getting that out in the next couple of weeks or so. And yeah, we're pretty excited about that. But if we were to do an interview with Jamie, I'd want it to just be sort of like overall UFC kind of stuff. Like have a separate section where we do guest interviews. Yeah. So that those kind of can stand out and be revisited.
Okay.
The idea being that those videos suck people in and then they start watching our weekly podcast as well for the latest news and updates.
The real gold.
That's where the real gold is.
Yeah.
Let's move on, because just to confirm so far, we both had Calderwood to win by decision. You nailed Dan Hooker, but not on the method. But that's put you 2-1 up. And we both got our Conor McGregor pick wrong, and we're pretty happy.
Moral victory.
Moral victory. We both got our next pick right as well. Makhmud Muradov, very impressily defeating Andrew El Dirty Sanchez by 3rd round TKO.
Yeah. Can I just say though, like, how cool is it that like Sanchez was able to stay on his feet? I mean,
he showed some heart.
Fucking impressive.
And it was one of those.
That was Kevin Lee Barboza style stanky leg. That was insane. And then the flying knee and everything that came afterwards, and he still never went down.
What's crazy as well is it was a very reserved performance, really, up until then. I felt Muradov was very much just sort of doing what he needed, looking to win the fight on decision. And then as soon as the opportunity opened up, suddenly he's jumping out with a flying knee.
It was pretty fun. And then straight over to Dana White afterwards to ask that he
follow him on Instagram. Yeah. Well, you know, apparently that his Instagram's got like 1 point something million followers.
Yeah.
It's a really big deal to him. Like, he's a big social media star. And that's why he really wanted Dana to follow him, because that is his big thing, getting social media views.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of different sort of fan bases behind him as well.
You want to know something amazing about him as well?
Yeah.
Mahmoud at the early point of his career was 4 wins and 4 losses.
Really?
After that fight, he's 25-6. And that is the end of a 14 fight. He's now onto a 14 fight win streak.
That's impressive. Who's he got on there? Any big names?
He's not been in the UFC very long. I had all of this stuff written down when we were doing our...
Just going through it now.
He beat ADC.
Yeah, ADC is good. Like, he definitely wasn't getting enough respect before. But, yeah, so I guess ADC and Sanchez are kind of the biggest names on there. But it doesn't really matter. You can only fight who's in front of you.
Exactly.
I'm not trying to take anything away.
He's had some fights cancelled, man.
I just didn't realise he had that many fights. I thought, you know, if you've been on like the regional scene for that long, there might be some other cool Europeans.
Well, it's not his fault. Do you want to hear the list of fights that he had cancelled in 2020?
Oh, yeah. Wow, I'm looking at it now.
Antonio Carlos Jr., Carl Roberson, Christoph Jotko, and Kevin Holland.
Unlucky, pal. Hey, you may do what you get, you know?
Looks absolutely excellent.
People give you lemons. You make lemonade by crushing it against Sanchez's skull. Sweet Jesus. Look, rightly so. We've focused a lot on the top portion of the card. I don't want to disrespect the prelims too much, but they weren't really on the same caliber. And as we go and work our way down,
we're still going to go through. We're going to sum up our picks.
Yeah. But I want to blitz through a little bit.
Muradov, excellent. Andrew Sanchez, he's so tough, but he's just not got the skills at that level yet.
Yeah, his striking game's improving still, but I was really kind of disappointed with his takedown game. I thought he was a bit better than that. I don't know. I kind of back to the drawing board for El Dirte.
Who do you see Muradov fighting next?
Man, it's a tough question.
I don't think he's ready for a ranked guy. I think you've got to give him one of these guys just hanging on the outside. I'd like to see one of Jotko.
That's what Jotko's out the rankings, yeah.
Or Antonio Carlos Jr. coming off a loss to Brent Tavares.
Yeah.
One of those fights I think could be interesting. Not Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland has ascended since.
That's
maybe a Carl Roberson, but Carl Roberson has kind of descended since that fight was organised.
Yeah. What about Ian Heinisch? Right on the edge there at 15.
Ian Heinisch has already got a fight booked against Kelvin Gastelum.
Oh,
he's got his sight on the stars, man.
A good fight.
If he loses that fight, yes, I can see that being a rebound fight that they organise for him.
Yeah.
But no, I think they like Heinisch. I think he's not quite at his potential yet. And you can see from a couple of his early performances in the UFC, it wasn't quite there. But a lot of people are really big on the guy. They think he's got something to him. And yeah.
Like Jotko. I think Jotko. Put him in with Jotko.
Jotko would be a great fight. Let's move on to definitely... We both got that right, by the way, just to confirm. I don't think we got the method right, but we both got the right guy. We did not pick this one correctly, though. Marina Rodriguez knocking out Amanda Ribas twice in the second round. Amanda Ribas won the first round, but I felt the commentary really nailed it on the head. When it was on the ground, on the feet, she was chasing, she wasn't cutting off.
Yeah.
And Marina Rodriguez is a much better striker, former Muay Thai professional. You could see what the difference was. She defended very well on the ground, accepted she lost that round. And as soon as Amanda tried to wind up a very lazy and poorly set up right hand, she just came through with that loop and right, caught her as Amanda was coming in. And the fight was really over from there. She goes to finish the fight. Herb Dean gets just a little too close to try and see what's going on. Marina thinks she's won the fight, stands up, starts celebrating. Amanda Hebus desperately tries to stand up, seem like she's still got her guard together.
Yeah.
Marina realizes the fight's not over, comes back, 2 more clean strikes. Herb Dean realizes that there's nothing more to do. Fight stops.
Yeah, and I think it could have been a bit of a fuck up there. Look, Dean just kind of gets a little too far in. Just sort of, I think his leg kind of goes up against Rodriguez. He then only really kind of like an honest mistake. I think he handled the situation well after that, but Rodriguez handled the situation like a goddamn champ. I think she's a scary lady. I see big things coming for both of these girls, but obviously Rodriguez is the one that's going to be vaulting up the rankings.
She needs to work on her takedown defense. That's been her big flaw. That's what lost her the fight against Carla Esparza, and that's what ended up with her getting a draw against Cynthia Calvillo as well. I think she's got 2 draws in the UFC. She's had a bit of a strange run.
And a no contest, right?
I believe it might be 1 draw and 1 no contest. I think that would make more sense.
But anyway, and definitely needs to shore the takedown game.
People say that the Carla Esparza fight, a lot of people feel like she won that fight as well.
Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit earlier. I think we both lean that way. But look, there's a lot of good grapplers and submission artists in this division. So definitely needs to shore up the takedown game. Who would you want to see a fight next?
I kind of want to see a rematch for Carla Esparza. Let her get revenge.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of fights you could make. Maybe...
Is Nina Ransorov booked against someone?
I don't know, but I don't know if she's ready to come back yet. I'll tell you what could be a shout. They were talking about doing Amanda Ribas versus Michelle Waterston. What about if you did Marina versus Michelle?
That'd be good.
2 strikers, well, one's classic sort of Muay Thai, the other more of a kind of karate fighter with a really good jiu-jitsu and wrestling game incorporated as well. I think that would be a really interesting one.
Nina Ransorov, Mackenzie Dunn.
No way.
Yep.
Wow.
For 10th of April, the Till Vittori card.
Damn, that's an interesting fight. That's a really interesting fight.
I don't know who I'm going to pick on that one.
I've got to do some research on that one. It's hard to say with Mackenzie Dunn because she improves every fight so quickly, particularly with striking.
Yeah, absolutely. And just generally, I think with like her approach to the game.
Yeah.
Like she looks so much healthier, so much better, so much more dangerous with every fight.
Going back to the card there, I'd like to see Marina, maybe Michelle, maybe Claudia Gadella. I don't think they do Claudia because she's, not looked too impressive and lost a couple recently.
Well, the other thing, for what it's worth, since the win, she's actually vaulted over both Michelle and Claudia in the rankings. I think after experience like that, she might be looking up.
Maybe Carla.
Yeah, maybe Carla rematch.
Carla, I think, makes a lot of sense, particularly if you think Rose has got to be next in line for the title. And if it's not Rose, it's going to be Joanna.
Yeah.
As for Ribas, I think this was it's never good to get knocked out. It's never good to get rocked or to get a concussion. However, she's a young fighter that was on an meteoric rise to the top. And sometimes when that happens, you end up with holes in your game. And I think what she realized is that she has got striking holes in her game compared to some of the elite level strikers in this division. And that's a really good lesson to learn at 23. 27.
Yeah.
She is
young in the game.
Young in the game. It's what, her 13th fight?
11th.
11th fight.
Yeah.
So she's got a lot of time. this needs to happen sometimes. You need to realize where your limitations are. You need to realize that striking's every fight starts standing up. And it's not just as easy as getting close to your opponents as close as possible, keeping your guard high and getting a grip on them. Not when it comes to somebody that's been a professional Muay Thai fighter, because they just understand range and distance in a way that you don't, and they'll time you. She learned that lesson. She'll bounce back. I think maybe this is a good example where the rankings were a little flattering to her, and maybe they moved her up a bit too quickly.
I don't know. I feel like she's a top fighter. You know, just it is what it is. You know what? If you want to kind of try and see where she does stand in the rankings, maybe don't look too far down. I think Angie overkill Hill. Give her another striker.
What about Jan Didoba? Coming off a loss as well.
Yeah, I can't believe she's only ranked at 13.
I know, it's crazy.
Look, that would be a good one. I think she's probably got a better shot at beating Angie. I think Angie will make it a really fun, tough fight. I think Jandy Hober, you know, I want to see him give her a slightly more winnable fight. I think Jandy Hober should be ranked above both of those women, as should Mackenzie Dern. You know what? As I look at the rankings, I feel like I need to see a lot more of these women fighting. That'd be the biggest thing. That's very true. Yeah. You know, I don't hate the Jandy Hober one. That'd be a cool fight. I'm a little late jumping on boards. The whole Amanda Hebus hype train, but I'd like to see him give her a fight that I think is a bit more winnable. Angie Overkill's no joke, but I don't think she's going to be able to handle her on the ground.
Period. I think that's a valid point. I'd agree with that. Let's move on to our prelim card, which involves us having to go into a little bit of news, because what was meant to be Otman Azaitar versus Matt Frivola ended up becoming Arman Tsarukyan versus Matt Frivola. And the reason for this is twofold. Hakrapast was unable to make weight and had some health issues. He had to pull out of his fight. Tsarukyan then missed weight by 3 pounds, weighed in given a second chance about an hour later, re-weighed in, still overweight, but 2 pounds down at 157 pounds. And Otman Azaitar didn't weigh in at all. And the reason is that for some reason, he decided to cut his wristband off, give it to somebody in his team, who then left the complex to give the wristband to some other bloke, who then smuggled in a bag, went into the hotel complex, rather than going into Otman Azaitar's room, went into a different room 4 balconies away, then shimmied across 4 balconies to sneak into Otman Azaitar's room to drop him off the bag, change his clothing, and then try and walk out like he was a secret agent with nobody the wiser, until security questioned him when they didn't recognize who he was as part of the team, and he just walked straight past them, tried to not even stop.
Stupid.
Not a smart move. Azaitar was cut from the UFC immediately. You really can't blame him. And the only question that all of us are wondering now is what was in the bag.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate too much, you know, but we don't need to. From everything we do know, what a fucking idiot.
My cousin Tom, he runs up to me at one point. He goes, Matt, it turns out that they know what's in the bag. Otman Azaitar, he had like something he was going to secretly stream the UFC the night. And I had to explain to him that was a joke because of everything that was going on.
Tom didn't know it was a joke.
He didn't know it was a joke.
Tom.
He eventually figured it out, but then, yeah. Well done, Tom. I think it's pretty obvious that what was in the bag was either a lot of money or a lot of drugs. I think that's the only explanation.
Or a little bit of both.
Or a little bit of both. A little bit of heroin in my life.
What a fucking idiot. What a fucking
Not a smart move.
No.
Because he was 13-0. He'd had 2 knockout wins in the UFC. He was looking like a beast. Matt Favola ends up fighting Arman Tsarukyan. We backed Matt Favola. He got outclassed. He got completely outclassed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Matt Favola couldn't win that fight, if he could get it back. It was just a constant case of frustration. Tsarukyan was just constantly half a second faster, half an inch closer, just constantly Johnny on the spot. And Favola just couldn't do anything. For me, it just sums up one word: frustration. Favola, I think he's a fun guy to watch. I think his kind of ceiling is kind of more or less been established at this point. We know how good he is. Arman Tsarukyan, I'd be really interested to see what else he can do. I thought he looked pretty cool.
Yeah, really, really good. And I think what's a real shame about this is that him versus Hakrapas, I think, would have been a really great fight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a real shame in that. But
Matt Favola, be
a pro. Make weight.
Matt Favola is a fighter into his heart, but he just hasn't got the same technical skills. He gave it a good effort, but he really got outclassed him. You're 3 for the first 6 going top down. I'm 2 for the first 6. This wasn't a great main card for me. But that takes us onto where I start doing a little bit better. Brad Tavares taking on Antonio Carlos Jr. Shoeface.
My guy.
But Brad Tavares looked exceptional.
Yeah, he looked
amazing takedown defense. Really asserted his dominance in the striking range. He was the better fighter in the night, all 3 rounds.
Yeah, phenomenal takedown defense. Shoeface was just 1 for 12 officially. I think Brad Tavares is finally moving on up. It's an interesting division, middleweight, and whatever happens next, it's going to be the winner of Costa versus Whittaker, waiting to see what happens with Izzy and what move Izzy wants to make after the Blachowicz fight. I don't even know who I want to see Tavares fight next.
I think that was a good establishing win for him after 2 losses to Shabazian and Adesanya.
Yeah.
He needed that win. He needed to reestablish that he was a fighter that could get good wins against decent guys in this division. Maybe Akhmedov. Maybe he's moving up. I think they're right next to each other in the rankings. I think that could be a good fight. I know Chris Weidman has already got a fight organized against Uriah Hall, I believe.
Yeah.
But I think maybe the loser of that fight, I think whoever loses between Uriah Hall and Chris Weidman maybe fights Brad Tavares.
Yeah, I get behind that. All right.
Now,
I picked Shoeface on this one.
So we're tied 3-3 going down, which takes us to Juliana Pena. We both got the right fighter. You have got a tiebreaker in hand on this one if it comes into play, because you called submission, I called decision. And I felt if you'd said to me after the first round that Juliana Pena was going to end up winning it in the 3rd, I wouldn't have believed you, because Sarah McMahon was excellent for about 10 minutes. About 8 minutes, she was absolutely excellent. But once the fight turned in Juliana's favor, it turned very quickly. And you really felt that McMahon just kind of not gave it away, but just...
She's a little long in the tooth now. She's just not what she used to be. I thought on paper this fight sounded pretty cool, but if you put like a prime Sarah McMahon in there, then that'd be really interesting. Unfortunately, I think she's 41 now.
This was one of the best fights on the prelims for me. This was a really good fight. Only finished on the prelims. Juliana Pena is a fighter. She looked really good off her back. Never let Sarah McMahon establish a position of dominance where she could get comfortable.
No.
And you could see the difference when Pena reversed the position at the 2nd round and then was able to get the takedown in the 3rd. She was so much more aggressive, looking for submissions, looking for the neck.
And so strong. Both these women are beasts. Sarah McMahon is
the physique of Sarah McMahon. Yeah, I mean, you can see it all the way through. She has got, and I mean this with no disrespect whatsoever, she has got the kind of body muscle definition of a man. And I mean that with no disrespect, like athlete in the truest sense of the word. But fair play to Juliana Pena, she was able to utilize her skills. I didn't like her call out. I think she got subbed by Jermaine Durandamy in a previous fight. I think she needs at least 2 more wins before she can start calling out Nunes.
Yeah.
But the great thing about bantamweight division is it's pretty open at the moment. So a couple of wins could get you there.
Definitely could. She's moved up to 6th in the rankings now. Do you know what? Like, I would like to see her fight any of the following: Holly Holm, Aspen Ladd, Raquel Pennington, Irina Aldana.
I don't want to see the Holly Holm fight. Reason being, I want to see Holly Holm and Jermaine Durandamy have a rematch as a title eliminator for the right to fight Nunes again. I think they're the 2 girls that deserve it. I think they're getting on in age. This is their absolute last chance. Their first fight was very even. I know that it was kind of marred by the illegal strikes and all the rest. I've heard a lot of different opinions on that matter, but I still think it would be a great fight. And I think you look at each of their resumes, Holly Holm's resume in boxing, GDR's resume in kickboxing. Both of them have been UFC champions. Both of them have got a lot more to prove in the sport.
Yeah.
And both of them, I think, have an argument to say that they could present something interesting against Nunes.
And I think for me, particularly Holly Holm, I'd love to see her try to get that one back.
Absolutely.
Let's move on.
We got this one wrong.
Yeah.
I think everyone was surprised by this, but the clue was in the weight cut.
Yeah.
Khalil Roundtree Jr. clearly had a tough cut. He missed the scales by a pound first time round. To his credit, he came back. He weighed in at 206. He made the mark, but he looked really drained after the second round, and he looked a little rusty. And we talked about how great he looked last time when he came off a layoff and how he'd really improved his skills.
Different kind of layoff, though, I think.
Different kind of layoff. And Prachnio fought like a guy who had everything on the line, and that third round had to pull it out. And he pulled it out. He made sure that his UFC career isn't over.
Yeah, and apparently he's been saving his chin up until now. I don't know. Yeah. Absolutely nuts.
Kind of supports Frankie Edgar's opinion that up until the light's literally going out, anything else is just a conscious decision.
Yeah, he's come out. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I hadn't heard that one. I don't know how much I agree with that.
This is also one of the toughest human beings on the planet who's almost impossible to knock out. So I'm sure for him, it's just like, I don't get it, man. I've been knocked down and hit by this. I just kind of continue. It's just a conscious decision. You're a very special human being, Frankie Edgar. Please come on our show. We'd have you above so many other people. We don't have any other people, but if we did have loads of other people and you said you wanted to be on the podcast, all those other people just gone right now.
Yeah, absolute dream guest.
No doubt about it. Let's flick on to the early prelims. We both got this one right.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. What can you say? Evloev looked every bit the undefeated, classy fighter that people think he is, and that he's already been showing in the UFC against a dogged, absolutely game, turned out to be final fight in the fantastic career of Nick Lentz, who retired after this. Wanted to see if he could still do it, gave it his all, almost had that submission locked in the first round, was always dangerous off his back. Did enough that on most judges' scorecards, he was given that first round.
Yeah.
But in the end, Evloev was just a different level above him.
Yeah,
and
solid submission defense as well. The thing I would say about the Carney, after the Arnold Allen fight, he had the eye surgery. He hasn't got full vision. For him, this fight was to see if he could still do it. And, he just feels like he can't. Absolute legend, though.
He had a lot of shots to the eye as well, which I think's got to make you a little bit nervous.
Oh, for sure.
And I think when it came to the grappling exchanges, so much of that is close. It's on feel, it's on touch, it's on instinct, it's on muscle memory, that maybe the vision wasn't playing as much of a factor. But on the feet, where he's just not seeing those jabs coming, he's not seeing where the openings are, it's time. This is a cruel sport. And I know that for a lot of these guys, they don't get paid what they deserve, and they don't enjoy the success sometimes that maybe they should have had for the sacrifice that they put in. And that's a tragic thing. But it's not going to get any better the longer you extend it. And unless you're a Michael Bisping, who, in all fairness, never left the top 10 of the division for most of his career, was always at the elite level. He is the exception that proves the rule, that if you haven't been a champ by 35, you're not going to be a champion. And unless you're Jorge Masvidal, you're not going to get your best paychecks out of nowhere at the age of 34 above. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's time for him to move on. Evloev was very upset that it was a split decision. I don't blame him. I think it was 29-28, unanimous.
I think that's what every sensible person saw.
But listen, it's the UFC, you got the win. And I think the only lesson there is maybe he's got to start just looking to be able to finish these fights a bit more. Take it out of the judges' hands.
Yeah, that's definitely the lesson here. But, you know, I wouldn't say it was for lack of trying. Lens definitely made it hard, particularly in that first round.
He's a vet. He's got all the tricks.
Yeah,
you get nothing for free.
Savvy as fuck.
That takes us to Amir Albazi. He looked excellent against very dogged, giving it his all, but just not quite on the same level. Zhalgas Zhumagulov. I'm so pleased I picked Albazi because I know that we've done this in opposite order, so I didn't realize this at the time, but this is the pick difference that ended up winning me the picks for the first time since we've done the show. Josh has won every other time. He had the tiebreaker against me again if we were tied, but it did not matter because Albazi pulled it out for me. Zhumagulov was throwing haymakers anytime he came inside, but I thought Albazi did a great job of pressuring without ever really risking himself too much.
No, Albazi looked real slick on the feet. Zhumagulov, particularly early on, had this habit of finishing all his combinations with his chin up and his hands down. I think Zhumagulov was kind of hoping he was going to be able to bully him a bit, put too much pressure on him. Albazi just picked him apart. Just great performance.
Without a doubt. And a really good opener to the card.
Yeah.
Prelims, a lot of decisions. I felt that the Albazi fight, the Brad Tavares fight, and the Pena versus Sarah McMahon fight were the real standouts. The Tsarukian fight was just a little one-sided for my liking.
Yeah.
If I'm honest.
Fight of the night, or performance of the night?
Performance of the night.
Poirier,
hands down.
Easy.
Hands down. Finish of the night ever. I don't care what you say about Michael Chandler. No one had ever knocked out Conor McGregor. That stands out. Fight of the night. Joanne Calderwood versus Jessica Wright. Most competitive fight at the highest level.
Okay.
3 rounds of absolute war. I don't want to give the fight of the night to the same one that I give the performance of the night. Dud of the night, probably Prechner versus Roundtree.
I'd say definitely.
All around good cards. I'd say the main card, a lot of people hating some of the earlier fights, but I thought, Muradov, Rodriguez, and Calderwood all look fantastic. I'm giving the main card an 8 out of 10, 8.5. I'd say the prelims maybe a 6.
Yeah, that's about fair. That's about right. All right.
Very nice. That takes us on to the news and a couple of quick things to cover that we'll just burn through before we get to bigger topics. Mario Yamazaki plans a return to MMA refereeing this year. Your opinion?
I'm not going to judge until I see if he's, see how he handles it. He wasn't the best referee. I feel like he got treated maybe a little harshly in the media, but he certainly wasn't like a Steve Mazzagatti. I wouldn't say he's at that level, So you work with the guy. If he's ready to come back, if he's improved as a ref, I'm glad he's back. Refereeing's a hard job. I would say we have had some really good referees emerging of late. Lucas Bazaki, Mark Smith. It's not just
Jason Herzog. I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, you know what? I left off this because I've rated Herzog for a long time. Him, Keith Peterson don't always get as much credit as guys as like Herb Dean and Mark Goddard. Herzog's definitely right up there. It's always good to have more refs, more top level refs. So I'm going to hold judgment until I see what he's like. How do you feel about it?
I don't think he's going to be reffing in the UFC. I think if he's ever have learned his lesson, he's fucking learned it from everything that's happened after the Shevchenko fight. And all you can hope is that the guy's going to do a better job. Referees have got a very important job, and it's a very difficult job. But I think the safety of the fighter is something that's become a lot more important as the sport's going into the mainstream more, and particularly after you read things like the Spencer Fisher article. Yeah. It's hard to ignore. And what's nice is I feel the referees have been doing a pretty good job, at least on the UFC side of things, of balancing the difference being when the fight is beyond winning for somebody. And I don't think we've had too many early stoppages where I really disagree with it. If anything, I think we've had a couple of examples where the fights have gone on still a little bit too long. So I think we've still got a way to go. But give him a chance. I don't see Dana ever letting him back in the UFC, though.
No, do you reckon he'll still do this?
Almost certainly, yeah. That's his brand. Couple of fights announced. Darren Till versus Marvin Vettori in April. Number 4 versus number 5. And I have to say, a very difficult fight for Darren Till, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fellow southpaw.
Yep. Marvin Vettori hits hard. He kind of tends to move through punches. I don't know. Darren Till has knockout power. I just don't think Marvin Vettori is going to walk into the end of anything, that dangerous. I think he's savvy enough to avoid the worst of Till's shots. I think
Till only lost a very close decision, though, to arguably the best guy in the division behind the champ, Robert Whittaker. So it's hard to say. It's very hard to say. And you know how I feel about Jack Hermansson as a fighter. I think he's very good. But I always felt that his number 5 ranking was a little generous. So it's going to be an interesting fight, but I think stylistically, Vettori presents a lot of problems for Darren Till, and I feel that Vettori will think he's got a measure on that. I'm curious to see where it goes. However great that fight is, it doesn't do anything compared to what's following it the week after. Robert Whittaker will be fighting Paulo Costa. This is a title eliminator, if there ever is one. Depending on what happens with Izzy in March, who knows? It could even end up being for an interim belt.
Yeah.
Don't throw it off the table. We're going to learn a lot about Paulo Costa from this fight, whether Whittaker wins or whether he wins. Because undefeated fighters don't always do very well after they lose their first fight.
No, I mean, I really like Whittaker in this one. I'm a big Bobby Knuckles fan. I think he's going to get it done. Just, I really feel like Whittaker's back. He seems to really be enjoying his life like a lot more. I don't know. It just seems like he's back in love with MMA. I think Whittaker's not going to run through him, but I think Whittaker's going to handle him. Not like Adesanya did, but I think unanimous decision.
Moving on to other news, Ngannou was opened as the betting favorite for his rematch against Stipe Miocic, which is going to be on March 27th. No real surprises there.
Nah. I really don't know. I think Miocic has got this one again, but such a dangerous guy. I think you have to put him as the favorite, right? But what are the actual odds on him?
I'll tell you now.
It might just be a way just to try and get some early money in on that, but
that's also true. It's a very close, to be fair. He's a minus 160.
Okay.
It's a pick'em fight. Yeah. It's a pick'em fight. That fight's card's obviously also going to have Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega coming up in what's going to be a very busy March. Obviously, February we've got coming up. We're going to be covering next week ahead of all the build up to the Volkov versus Overeem card. Then, of course, after that, UFC 258, which they've started really stacking up. And we'll be getting to that on a later show. For the moment, I think we've got to switch on to some boxing news, and we'll start with the good side of boxing. Manny Pacquiao is looking like he's going to fight a real person. He's fighting Ryan Garcia. Up-and-coming killer. Really, really competitive fight. Top-level belts on the line. I'm excited about this one. Ryan Garcia had to come through some adversity against Luke Campbell, got knocked down in the second round, but came back to win it with a body shot, which I know you always appreciate.
Yeah.
Manny Pacquiao hasn't fought in a while, but he is still riding high off his win against Keith Thurman, which is the reason he is still a holder of one of the top level belts in the welterweight division in boxing. So this is going to be, oh no.
What?
So apparently it might be an exhibition. Why is it going to be an exhibition? That is what Ryan Garcia's father is saying. I hope that's a real fight with real belts on the line. If it's not, then I'm just not interested. Boxing, get your act together, because that actually means we've got to go straight into fucking Jake Paul is fighting Ben Askren on April 17th in a professional 8-round main event put on by Trillard, who are the same company that put on the previous Nate Robinson fight with Jake Paul, as well as obviously on that same card main eventing Roy Jones Jr. versus Mike Tyson. Listen, say what you want. Jake Paul is an arsehole, but he's not a terrible boxer. And he's been doing this for enough now that he's got a basic understanding of the sport. This is a very winnable fight for him. Make absolutely no mistake about it. But, excuse me, I don't understand why Ben Askren took this fight. Ben Askren has an amazing MMA career. He was a world champion in ONE FC and Bellator, and until he came up against a Masvidal flying knee, he was undefeated, having taken down some seriously dangerous strikers. He did all of that, being able to take them down. The one fight I saw him fight, where he tried to keep the fight standing because he didn't want to go down with the other guy, was Damian Maia. And that was 2.5 rounds of some of the worst striking that I have ever seen. Me and Josh would annihilate Ben Askren. Annihilate Ben Askren in a boxing match. And that is not a statement to brag about how good at boxing me and Josh are. We are rubbish. We don't really have that much stamina. I've been putting off running again in preparation for our rematch, to the point where like it's become a mental block. Like I put the shoes on and I start getting scared. I look at the hills around my house. I'm like, what am I fucking doing here? But Ben Askren, I would still beat you. You've just had a hip replacement. Your hands are terrible. You're telling people you're not going to spar. This kid is an athlete. He is 24 years old and he can run the 40-yard dash in a 4.4. For people who don't understand how fucking crazy that is fucking crazy. And he did that at 17.
Yeah, it's ridiculously fast. I got to imagine it's on a handheld timer, but it's still going to be a ridiculously fast time. I don't like this fight, but I understand why Ben's taking this fight.
He's getting paid.
Yeah,
he's getting paid.
He wants to get off the sofa. I think he should be taking it easy with his hip, whatever. Look, it's going to be very frustrating for MMA for about a week or two. Everyone chatting shit about how Jake Paul could beat a former MMA champ. It doesn't really matter, but it does piss me off a little bit. But yeah, Ben can do what he wants. There is some talk about maybe it being Jake Paul, Nate Diaz instead. I know the date's been set and everything, but everyone's flaky as shit these days. I trust nothing. Nate Diaz would be a much, much more interesting fight.
Well, Nate Diaz would be a very one-sided fight, and you just want to see Jake Paul get knocked out.
Yeah.
I think there's an element of genius in the fact that they've picked the one guy who's got enough credibility, but is also very beatable. After he knocked out Nate Robinson, what was everybody saying? Well, he's not fighting real fighters. He's not writing real fighters. Well, now he is. He's just happening to do it under circumstances that favor him massively. And from what I'm hearing from Ben Askren, unless he really is training and he really is sparring, and saying he's not is just him playing his own games back at Jake Paul, which I'm not so sure about is possible. Maybe he could pull something out. But the way he's talking about this is like he's just fighting some kid off the street. And I think that would be a really big mistake to make and a big overestimation of what your own abilities were standing up.
Yeah.
And listen, we don't need this. If Jake Paul wins this fight, you're talking about a guy with the ego complex the size of a fucking mountain. Okay. If he wins this fight, you will never shut this fucker up. You will never shut him up because he will always be able to say, I knocked out or I beat a world champion MMA fighter in a fight. Doesn't matter what the conditions are, doesn't matter what the situations are. He's going to have that for life. We don't need this shit.
I could give a fuck. I didn't know the Paul brothers were until one of them did that really disrespectful video filming a dead body in Japan. And then again, no idea about anything about either of them until they start, entering into the boxing world as much as they have. I think it's ridiculous that a guy will have 3 professional fights as a boxer without ever fighting another professional boxer, other than in name only. It's bad for boxing. It's stupid. It's annoying, but I'm not going to hear about this guy again afterwards. He can say whatever the fuck he wants. I'm going to completely avoid it. It's so easy.
The only thing you can hope in this situation is that whatever happens, whether he wins or loses, he either keeps winning to the point that his ego makes him think he can fight somebody for real like Nate Diaz and gets knocked out, or he gets knocked out in this fight. And the thing about somebody like Jake Paul, this all ends once he loses. Yeah. It only takes one guy really kicking his ass, really hurting him, knocking him clean out, and then I guarantee you all of this stops. And that is the difference between him and anyone who's real in the sport.
Yeah, I'd be fucking amazed if Ben Askren's the man to do it.
I'd be surprised as well. I do feel a little bit ironic because I've always tried not to be too critical of the YouTube boxing side on the basis that you and I have had a couple of fights that we've recorded and have ended up putting up on YouTube. But I think the big difference here is that for us, it's for the love of the sport. We have made no money off that. I've actually spent a lot of money having to get all of the equipment together to do it.
That's true.
So we haven't benefited at all. We're just crazy people that do shit differently to amuse ourselves, when we can be finally ready to run after what's been a difficult 2020 health-wise and weight-wise. Fuck you, COVID. But yeah, don't make money from boxing. If you're going to do it on YouTube, just go down the gypsy route, just fucking hands in a bit of fucking oil and brine and, beat your brains out. Obviously, if there are any kids watching, don't do that. That's bad advice. Only ever train in the gym. Or fight your friends who you know how tough they are. You can gauge the level. Yeah, I think that's about it for the show.
Yeah.
Next week, we're going to be covering, obviously, Overeem versus Volkov. Hopefully getting the deep dive out in the next couple of weeks. And who knows, maybe getting an interview guest on as well for a special episode. We shall see. Until next time, guys. Laurie, thank you very much for watching as always. If anyone else is, I'm very surprised, but thank you.
Bye, Laurie.
Bye-bye.